continue to develop myself to be the best leader I possibly can. And I really strongly believe in moral authority. Like, do what you say you're going to do, walk your own talk. When I was in college, I read a quote, I believe by Benjamin Franklin, that said, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Welcome back to the Beyond the Scale podcast. I am so excited to have Bryce Henson in the house today, the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, our fearless leader. He is in our studio today. Bryce, welcome.
Mary Katherine, thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited and honored to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. So just so our listeners know where we're going to go with this today, we are going to talk a little bit about just your overall backstory, your experience, your own health and fitness journey.
Sure.
And just kind of like walk us through how you got to be the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, which I am so excited to learn more about. And I know our listeners will get incredible value from this episode. So just to start off, tell us a little bit about, growing up. I know you're not from California. You're from Michigan.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you discovered Fit Body.
Totally. Well, actually do the full backstory even before that. But interestingly enough, as you just teed up, me coming from Michigan, the Midwest, your husband Trevor and I grew up about an hour from each other. Not even actually, interestingly. But before I jump into the Midwest story, originally actually from Atlanta, Georgia. In fact, when I was a little boy, I used to talk like this, like a little Southern drawl, similar to you. I know you grew up in Virginia as well. And I say Atlanta, but really this is in the early 80s. And I lived probably about 45 miles south of Atlanta. It was the sticks. So it was really the country, if you will. Okay. Came from a very, I would say, on one hand, good family, especially my mom and my siblings, but a very volatile family as well. And it was because my father, he was a drug addict, an alcoholic, and he was addicted to gambling. Not necessarily the trifecta for a good family upbringing. Interestingly, it was volatile. It wasn't all bad because at some point, his father passed away, my grandfather, and he had an inheritance. So that seemingly things, from that perspective, from a financial influx, at least for a little bit of time, were better, even though my first house was a trailer park in the sticks of northern Georgia, southern Atlanta. But ultimately, when I was a young kid, there was a lot more dark days than good, according to my mom. And the situation, she knew for quite some time that the situation was getting worse and she needed to basically remove herself and her 3 kids, but she didn't really know, the right time. And probably our audience can maybe relate, especially if you've been in a bad relationship, a really sticky situation. But thankfully, by the grace of God, my mother, did everything that she could within her power. And as the story goes, after a weekend bender of my father being out and about, drinking alcohol and gambling a lot of money, he came back, and certainly my mother wasn't too pleased with his behavior, which is a repeating type of behavior. And an argument had, broke out, which I guess was common at the time. I remember a little bit of this, but this is more of my mother recounting the story, if you will. Yeah. Most times it was verbal, but this time things changed and it got physical. And the next thing you know, my mom was upstairs kind of fleeing my father, and she found herself on the bed being kind of choked out, gasping for air, gasping for her life. And by the grace of God, my little sister kind of came running through. My brother and I weren't in the house at the time. And little sister startled my father, who was basically in a drunken blur, and got to the point where my mom slipped his grip, her knees hit the ground, and she ran out of that room like a bat out of hell, grabbed my sister, and then off she went. And really, that was the night our lives changed.
Yeah.
But in a good way. Even though it was, quote unquote, a tragedy at the time, it was actually a blessing. And I think that's a really good message, to our audience today. Everyone has trials and tribulations, and many, you maybe came from an alcoholic family or a drug-related family and can relate to the volatility. But interestingly enough, with the proper mindset and the proper focus and taking the high road and really, trying to better yourself, you can realize that these, quote unquote, tragedies in life, they're actually there for a reason. And the words of Ryan Holiday, who's a New York Times bestselling author, wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way. I really feel like that was an obstacle, but it was actually the way for my family to get to a better setup. And seemingly overnight, my family, my brother and my sister, and actually my brother and I went first a few days after my sister and my mom came. Basically, our lives changed. We shut off to the state of Michigan, and I was about 10 at the time. So going from the south to the north, and I joked around how I used to talk with a draw. I used to say, yell it like that, and all the kids. It can be ruthless at times for the first 6 months in Michigan. Michigan, we would always get, asked like how to talk and how to say yellow and y'all and these words, which is kind of funny in hindsight. But the following 10 years, there was definitely many very strong positive moments. I felt like I gained a good supportive family. And the reason that we went to Michigan was my mom grew up there, and her mother, which would be my grandmother, was living there. And by the grace of God, she was, because without her, the situation would have been a lot worse. Yeah. But for the following 10 years, we lived in a tiny little 3-bedroom apartment, very humble. My brother and I shared a room. My grandma had a room, and then my mother and my sister shared a room and also a bed for the better part of 10 years, just to be able to get her on her feet. And I just look back and I learned a lot throughout that period of time about, family and how that can be a really, strong force and, making sure that you're there for your loved ones. Also the resiliency, the work ethic of my mom, who was a single mom, had no expectation to be joining the workforce, really, didn't have visibility that the situation was going to go off tilter, but she, sucked it up and she did everything that she could with 3 kids, working multiple jobs. And I learned a lot. And I'm certainly, our audience can relate. And I think I have a lot of respect for that. So really, that's kind of the latter part of my childhood, which I wanted to color in the details before we kind of hit about the fitness stuff.
Yeah. Wow. That is just a crazy ride that you've been on in the last, your whole life. That is a lot. That's a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
A lot to see that happen and just try to be strong for your mom. Like, I'm sure that you and your brother and your sister just felt like you needed to support her and you needed to, be strong for her in that journey. Did you ever just kind of feel like you were alone at times, like you needed to be strong for her because she was going through so much? Or
Totally, actually. Yeah. And adversity builds strength and character. And I feel like our family forged very tight bonds from that. And certainly we relied a lot on our mother, being that we were 10, 8 and 6 at the time. But also, too, she relied on us. And interestingly, I always had this mindset of if it has to be, it's up to me. And really seeing that and going through that experience made me, realize the value of self-accountability, of work ethic, of, trying to be the best person I possibly could for my mom and family, even though at a young age. But we got through and, we got the job done. But I also think that's why I'm so passionate today about health and fitness. And especially when I look at a lot of our global clients, or we call our dream client, Mrs. Jones, or even Mr. Jones, her husband. And I see my mom in a lot of, our clientele, and seeing how, our program of fitness and fat loss and nutrition and mindset coaching, a lot of things that you're teaching on the show, Mary Katherine, can really help people in a very positive way. And I'm so passionate about this show and what we do at Fit Body Bootcamp, because it really it pays it forwards and helps, people just like my mom that are in a situation that need help. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's so important. Like, you understand where our listeners are coming from. And I think that is very important to highlight. Tell us a little bit about, you used that passion, and you had a passion for health and fitness. You got into ownership with Fit Body Bootcamp. You moved to the West Coast. How did you get into Fit Body ownership?
Yeah, great question. So interesting. It's so funny being the CEO of the brand, and we're shooting this at the very end of 2022. When I first moved to California is 2005. And this was just after the 10 years I just was articulating living in Michigan. I put myself through school. I went to Michigan State, and I got a job opportunity. Initially it was an internship, and then turned into a full-time job in Southern California. And I was very excited to make the move. Certainly had a good experience in Michigan. I always say this, a great place, amazing, salt of the earth people, but not the fitness capital of the world. And I think for 2 reasons. One, my family, as I just mentioned, came from very humble beginnings for first world standards. And I always say this because life's about perspective. And in my later adulthood, or early adulthood, I should say, later years, I ended up moving to South America for 2 years. And actually at that point, I saw real poverty, and I saw, okay, first world standards are very different than third world standards. And I think that's really an important message as well. Comparison is a thief of joy, I feel, in life. So that's a great message for our audience as well. But in any case, coming from humble beginnings, Taco Bell and fast food is much cheaper, more affordable than some healthy foods, even though long-term it's not, the right way to go and sustainable. But between that and also too, just the culture, really, we were athletic. My mom put us in sports to kind of keep us out of trouble and keep us off drugs, as she mentioned. Really, nutrition wasn't a big focal point in our family, especially my mom being a single mom, working a few jobs. She just was trying to put, get by and put food on the table. Right. So good, clean nutrition wasn't a focal point for us. So in any case, when I moved to to California in 2005. I was excited to be in LA, the palm trees, the blue skies, all that LA has to offer. But I always share this. It also can be the plastic capital of the world, especially when you're 21. You have very little friend network. You're living 3,000 miles from home. Fitness was not a major, part of my life. I didn't have the energy, the confidence, the enthusiasm that I do now. And I just didn't have fitness actually. And I lived, that way for the following couple years. And I certainly had good days, but very, very candid. I had more dark days than good. And then a fortuitous situation happened, which really exposed me to the fitness industry, at least living a healthy, fit life. My first fitness mentor was a close friend from college. His name was Adam. He moved out to Southern California, and we actually lived together. And that's kind of how my start in the fitness realm began. And a little bit about Adam. He was not on the cover of Men's Health, but he could have been. He had the six-pack abs, the glistening muscles, all the confidence, the energy. All the girls loved him. I certainly looked up to that. And we lived together for the better part of 2 years. And embarrassingly enough, when I look back, and this is early 2007, it took me, Mary Katherine, probably about 3 months to finally muster up enough courage to say, Adam, can you show me a little bit of this fitness game that you've been doing? Because I was, self-conscious and I didn't have that level of confidence. I saw what he was doing, but I just didn't think it was attainable for me. So he turned to me and said, Bryce, I thought you never ask. But the rules of engagement here, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. You saw how many friends at college asked me how to lift weights and work out and clean eat, and how many actually stuck with it. And the answer was virtually zero. So he said, I want you to commit to me for 12 weeks that you're going to do whatever I want you to do. You're going to lift what I want you to lift. You're going to eat what I want you to eat. You're going to train how I want you to train. And after that 12 weeks, I feel confident that you're going to really see the result. But if you don't, that's okay. At least you gave it a fair shot. Because again, I don't want to waste anyone's time here. And that was basically the level of expectation to begin with. And I think it's actually very serendipitous that our bootcamp, Fit Body Bootcamp, has a 12-week ultimate transformation program. And I think that's a really, good coaching link to showcase someone that, hey, this program works. In the famous words of Tony Robbins, progress equals motivation. So not to say that most of our global clients are going to all of a sudden go from body A to body B, their dream body, in 12 weeks, but at least actually show them enough insight that, hey, this is actually working. And again, progress equals motivation. Once you see a little bit more progress, then you become motivated. And that was the same for me. I really trained with Adam for 2 years, but really it was a 6-month focus that I really made the transformation. And really, did I completely transform my physique in 12 weeks? No. But I saw enough where I was like, oh, this is actually working. And really within 6 months, I dropped 20 pounds of body fat. Oh. I put on 20 pounds of lean muscle. Okay. Interestingly enough, and I love the show Beyond the Scale, I actually weighed the same amount both before transformation and after transformation. But when you look at my before and after picture, completely different. So I think that's from a body composition perspective. There's a lot to be learned there as well. But also too, from a lifestyle perspective, as I mentioned, I got an internship in LA. That's what brought me out, which turned into a full-time job, and it was a sales gig. And I went from the lowest performing sales rep in my company all the way to the highest performing sales rep in my company within 12 months.
As you were doing that transformation?
The only thing that changed was my fitness.
Yeah.
So when people ask me, Mary Katherine, Bryce, I get it, I see it, but I just can't afford your program. I can't afford to be fit. And my response is, you can't afford not to be fit.
Yeah.
And it worked for me. And interestingly, seeing studies these days, the average American who actually is healthy and fit and has a good weight earns more than 28% than the average person who doesn't, than statistically obese. And we can probably talk about, health complications, disease, and obesity. The average person who is statistically overweight or obese spends over $1,500 a year in extra healthcare costs than the person who's healthy and fit. So it just reinforces that message. And again, fitness is important. And yes, you need to be able to, track, your progress, and, the weight is one aspect, but fitness is way more than that. And that's really a big message that I wanted to share. And really, Mary Katherine, that's kind of how I got my first fitness transformation. And that really leads me to, I guess, becoming a Fit Body Bootcamp owner, which I guess I'll now.
Yeah. Now, I love what you said about how you gained 20 pounds of muscle, you lost 20 pounds of body fat, and your weight stayed the same, but your body composition changed. I've had a similar experience. After I had my daughter, she's 4 now, but after I had my daughter, I was very heavily involved in coaching in our studio at the time. So I was coaching 5 sessions a day. I was also working out on top of that. And I got down to a very low body fat percentage. And I actually had a goal, I had a body fat percentage goal, and I got below that. And I felt great. But honestly, looking back, my body composition back then is not what I look like today. And I actually weigh the same that I did back then, but I actually like the way I look now more than the way I did 3 years ago.
You're more toned. You have some lean muscle mass.
My body composition has changed so many times. Like I've been pregnant twice. I've had 2 children in the last 4 years, but I'm still at that same weight that I've been for the last 4 years, but my body composition has changed so much. And I think so many of our clients at the gym, it's like they get so honed in on that number on the scale. And I just try to tell them, like, listen, what's your goal? You want to be more lean? You want to have more muscle? You want to feel stronger? You want to have more energy? Like, let's not worry about that number. Let's worry about lifting in the gym. Like, let's be able to lift your child. Just the other day, one of our neighbors is having a baby, and Sophia and I, my daughter, we got her a pregnancy journal. And I said, let's walk down the street and deliver this to Miss Lauren. And she said, okay. And I said, okay, come on, hop in the stroller. She said, no, Mommy, I'm going to walk. And I said, well, if you walk, you are walking the whole way because I'm not carrying you back up our half a mile up the street in our neighborhood. And she said, okay, I'll walk. And so we got down to the bottom, we delivered the gift, and what do you know? Can you hold me? Can you carry me? And so I carried her half a mile up the road. And when I got home, I said, I would not have been able to do that a few years ago. If I wasn't lifting the weights like I am now, if I wasn't, putting the reps in the gym, I wouldn't be able to carry my 40-pound child up the hill. And like, that's what I want to be able to do. Like, who cares about that number on the scale? I want to feel strong. I want to feel like I can carry my kid around and run around and chase them without being out of breath. And I think just to your point of your body composition and how, you might be the same number on the scale, but your body composition changes, that's just so much more important.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I love that, Mary Katherine, because I always say the women in my life, they do boot camp because they can lift stuff, they can build stuff, they can just live a functional, healthy, happy life.
Right.
Because that's really what it's all about. But in any case, to answer your initial question, really how I got started, because I basically hijacked that answer a little bit and just want to kind of tell you my first fitness transformation, which really opened my eyes to really what fitness can do. And to your point, even to this day, yes, everyone wants a good physique, me included, right? But really the energy, the confidence, the mental clarity is really what keeps me going in the fitness game. But transitioning to that story after I had my transformation, which either many of you listening to this have already had and or you are on your progress and process with Fit Body Bootcamp, hopefully, or anywhere, because our whole goal here is to basically just promote a healthy and fit lifestyle. After that transition, I trained with Adam for a couple of years, but interestingly enough, it never occurred to me that I could actually be a coach until one day someone walked up to me at the gym and said, hey, they introduced themselves. I've been watching you lift weights and I was curious how you eat. And all of a sudden, Mary Katherine, a light bulb went off and I was like, oh, wow, they're actually asking me for some nutrition and fitness guidance. And this light bulb went on that, holy smokes, I can potentially give back that was given to me by Adam. So I did the next thing I logically could do is I looked up the gold standard of certified personal training, which is National Academy of Sports Medicine, actually our partner at Fit Body Bootcamp. And even though my sales career was skyrocketing because of the fitness transformation, I didn't think I ever would make this a full-time thing, but I thought I could train some people on the nights and weekends just like Adam did for me. So I got my certified personal trainer certification. I started, training some clients in the nights and weekends and kind of started getting a feel for that. I ended up taking a 2-year hiatus, which I kind of shared at the very beginning, and moved to Brazil, a little island in the very south called Florianopolis. Ended up meeting my wife, Tatiana, who's my better half. She's my partner in crime, and she runs one of the locations that we have. And then in early 2012, when I was coming back to California, I started looking into what I was doing. And previously, after I got my certified personal training certificate, I believe I updated my Facebook profile to personal trainer. And then I started receiving ads from this gentleman named Bedros Keuilian, who, if you don't know, Bedros is the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp. He's a mentor of mine, a business partner of mine, and one of my best friends. And he was talking about this little thing called Fit Body Bootcamp. And this was in 2012. My fitness transformation that's referred to is in 2007. And Fit Body Bootcamp at that time was a licensee program. I think it was launched somewhere around 2009, 2010. And it was initially launched from a model of using cheerleading dance studios in the mornings when they had availability. But in 2012, the brand was getting a lot of traction momentum, and Bedros decided to franchise the system and start putting our locations into brick and mortars. So I put in an application or expression of interest, which is an application. And at the time, there was only about 15 or 20 owners in the entire brand. So did all my diligence, called as many people as I possibly could, but I was just invigorated with this passion to help people with their health and fitness. So in the summer of 2012, decided to do the scariest thing I possibly possibly could have done at that time, which was to put my life savings at this little dream and sign the paperwork to open my first Fit Body Boot Camp location, which landed in a little city, actually about 10 miles from where we're at right now in the studio here at headquarters in Fit Body Boot Camp, in a city called Yorba Linda, which is just north of Disneyland. And that was in 2012. And really, Mary Katherine, for the following 5 years, ended up recruiting in my family. As I mentioned, I recruited my wife, Tatiana, to be right-hand man, if you will. Brought in my brother, who is now our director of coaching and profitability, who owns a location in Michigan. My sister was our head coach and integrator for many years at one of our locations that we still have today. My mother, Donna, she's in the team, and she does our customer service. So I just made it this really cool family affair, which I think is an awesome message, because really, like Fit Body Boot Camp, we are family. We call each other family. And my vision, once I saw this was working, was to really bring my family in, inspire fitness, change lives. That's who we are, what we do. That's our mission at Fit Body Boot Camp. And I thought to myself, man, what greater way to make a living, or no greater way to make a living than help people live a better life and then make a living in the process. And that's really the foundation of my ownership before I ended up entering the headquarters side of the brand.
So you pretty much changed the blueprint for your family. Like, you, looking back, where you came from and the story that you shared, you were so passionate about health and fitness and helping others that you got your entire family involved, and you helped shape their future as well. Just to, think back on where you started.
Well, thank you.
Change the blueprint.
I haven't actually thought of it that way, but I guess when you look at it from outside eyes, I could say that.
It's great.
I appreciate that.
Very, very inspiring for our listeners, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So your mom, she works for you.
She does,
she
actually.
Works with you.
Yeah, she works for me and with me, I always like to say. Interesting. It's a really cool setup for how much she poured into us.
Right.
And for her, when all the chaos that happened, she made the decision that, okay, her career wasn't going to be first, and foremost. She needed to make money and put food on the table, but really she was going to dedicate her life to her kids. And that's what she did for the better part of 12 years to make sure she could, support us as much as possibly she could. And I'm excited that my brother and I can return the favor. So she actually lives with me and my wife, Tatiana, for 6 months out of the year, from the beginning of the year to about July 4th. And then we're originally from Michigan. My brother lives there. So she lives with my brother Barrett in Michigan for the other 6 months. So I guess she snowbirds, if you will.
Yeah.
And that way she can, live in California and be close to us, and, experience some nice weather, especially the cold times of year. But she likes the season. She likes the 4 seasons. So she gets to spend a little summer, a little fall, and a little winter in Michigan, and come back before the holidays. So it's a kind of a cool situation and set up for her and for our family.
I love it. So when you guys get together as a family, do you just talk about Fit Body all the time?
Probably a little too much, actually.
It's like, all right, guys, let's talk about something else.
It can be a little consuming for sure. But yeah, we got a lot in common. We talk a lot about Fit Body and just a lot of good things.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So you become a multi-location owner, and then one thing leads to the next, and you become the CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp. Walk us through that, because that is seriously impressive. When we joined the brand, we just knew you as a multi-location owner, and we saw the amazing things that you were doing, and then you become the CEO. Bedros says, hey, I want you to be the CEO of Fit Body.
That's crazy. Like this kid from the Midwest who Taco Bell was the staple of his diet, was allergic to lifting weights up until he's about 23 years old.
Mr. Fitness now.
Is now Mr. Fitness, the CEO of Fit Body. Holy smokes. How did that happen? But in all seriousness, the message is, if that can happen to me, you are more capable than you think, is really the message that I want to share with you and our audience today, Mrs. Mary Katherine. So how that all happened, I guess, like for those 5 years, explosive growth. And certainly there was a lot of, trials and tribulations as well. I'm kind of giving the highlight here, but running a business and running multiple locations, especially in my 20s, and investing your life savings. There's a lot of learning lessons, but certainly Fit Body provide a lot of support, and very fortunate for that. So in 2018, when our brand was really starting to hockey stick in terms of growth, Bedros had reached out to me, and interestingly enough, just like the same experience when after about 2 years of training with my buddy Adam, when that person walked up to me at the gym and introduced himself to me asking for some advice, Bedros reached out to me in early 2018 and asked me to be his VP. And I thought to myself, wait, Me? Wait, me? And certainly I took a look back and I knew I had success, right? And had multiple locations and, developed a strong relationship. I was in our mastermind group. I was really engaged with the brand. So I knew all that to be true. But, sometimes we can be our own biggest critics, if you will, if I can say that right. But in any case, after some dialogue, and he still gives me a hard time because I'm also a hard charging entrepreneur and I had my blueprint set.
Yeah.
He always says, Bryce, you said no to me a few times. And I'm like, B, I did not say no to you. We had a few.
Had to think about it.
Yeah.
Figure out how it fits in the plan.
Exactly. And like hard charging entrepreneurs, I had my plan. So I just wanted to make sure there was a good plan. But it really came to my attention. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm doing great things and feel very proud of the trajectory that we're on. But you know what? I can probably help and impact and touch a lot more people, especially in this gift. That was really the shining light that made me take that next step and become the VP and accept his position. And this is in 2018. It occurred to me, one of the things that I saw from an owner lens, and I give Bedros, or B, we call him, so much credit because he had the vision. He's a very strong visionary and entrepreneur, and fitness touched his life as well. But he'll always be the first to say he's not an operational guy. So he wanted someone from an owner lens. He had the vision to be like, you know what, we're getting to another chapter. I want to be able to insert some ownership experience, some leadership experience to really take our brand to the next phase, if you will. And one of the first observations I had that, really helped me within my career and, I guess following here at HQ was the invention of the coaching and profitability team. And at the time we had some strong business coaches and had experience in operations, but no one on our business coaching team had experience running a Fit Body boot camp. And I turned to B and I was like, hey, this light bulb went off. Who better to coach our owners than the most successful owners in our brand? Right. And that was the birth of the coaching and profitability department. And then a few things, continued on. We added more infrastructure to our brand. And this little thing called COVID came knocking on all our doors and threw a big wrench for everyone. Our audience certainly is fully aware of that. But we battled back and we battled through it. And we really leaned on our ownership support and we networked and we collaborated together. And really, we were able to navigate that storm and very grateful for that. And then really in 2021, which it culminated the position of CEO. And certainly I still have a long way to go. We're on this journey, this growth journey, this fitness journey, this mindset journey together, this personal growth journey together. But certainly would like to say I did some things right as well. And as Bedros' empire has grown and expanded in a few other areas from True Lean supplementation and a few other things, decided it was time to elevate me and release the day-to-day operations to CEO. So to put a bow on it, that's basically the journey. And again, I just want to reinforce it's very serendipitous. I still pinch myself to this day thinking how this all came to be. But honestly, if I can do something like this, literally, my friends, you are way more empowered than you think, and the sky is the limit. So really, the show is about empowerment and inspiration and mindset, and certainly that's the message I want to share today.
Yeah, and one thing that I admire about you the most is how busy you are. Like, this is the king of meetings. Like, you have a lot of meetings. You are very scheduled. You have everything mapped out, but yet you still make time to take care of yourself. And like, that is just something that I admire. Like, I always see that you're posting, you go to your Fit Body Bootcamp location during the week, 5 a.m., 5:15?
I'm very regimented. So if I didn't have my responsibility at HQ, I'd probably drop in a couple more times. But Mondays and Fridays at 5:15, my team knows to expect me. My clients know expect me. And I love me some fit body. So I need to get my workout in and lead by example. Yeah,
I love that you're still doing that. You're making time for yourself every day. Like I've seen you do polar plunges in the backyard. You're doing cryotherapy. You're doing IV therapy. Like, you're always taking care of yourself and making sure that you're propelling towards, being the best version of yourself despite anything else that's going on. Like I said, your schedule is so busy, but yet you're still investing that time in you. I would love for you just to share with our listeners, like, when you're in that busy season. Like, for me right now, I'm just in the trenches of being a mom. Like, there is no day that is the same. Like, there is no day that I can predict exactly what's going to happen that day, because there's always going to be something. And
Stone and Sophia are going to be...
Yeah, like, Stone is 1.5. So things are always changing with him. And if I think I'm going to get up and go to the gym the next day at 6:15, that's going to be the night that somebody's sharing the pillow with me and I can't actually crawl out of the bed. What are some tips for our listeners on just kind of staying consistent with your routine or fitting in those daily habits? For me, I like to say I have habits, like daily habits that I have to get each day. It's not necessarily going to happen at the same time every day. Like, my routine is not going to be the same, but as long as I'm still drinking my water, I'm getting my 6 to 8 hours of sleep, I'm getting 30 minutes of movement. Like, as long as I'm getting that in, it doesn't matter what time it happens. And so what are some tips that you could give our listeners for just staying consistent?
Totally. Well, I do want to give you a shout out and massive empathy to you, Mary Katherine, and all of our audience who have children. And I know a lot of our audience do, because I don't yet. I'm working on it, hopefully at some point soon, but certainly
exciting.
But that's a whole nother layer of complexity. And I have so much empathy, for that. Right now, I don't have that. And I also have a team, an army of people to support me, and my team goes the credit. But I do ground myself, and I always like to be the best, continue to develop myself to be the best leader I possibly can. And I really strongly believe in moral authority. Like, do what you say you're going to do, walk your own talk. And for me, on one hand, it's not overly challenging because I love fitness and what it did for me. So it's really my foundation. When I was in college, I read a quote, I believe by Benjamin Franklin, that said, "Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." Now, I candidly, I didn't take action on that quote, but I literally remember highlighting in my book and kept keeping my notes. And about 5 years later, like through my, transition to California and my fitness journey, then I started to adopt that. So to this day, I feel like that is a routine and a habit that really opens up my world. I wake up religiously at 4 o'clock or sub 4, and that just gives me a lot of time and space to be able to think, plan my day, plan my week. Also, I'm, the type of guy that always gets in my workouts early. Yes, for the aesthetic value, but really it gives me energy and confidence, enthusiasm. And I'm a really strong believer, if you want to gain more confidence, you need to stack wins and really keep the promises to yourself. So for me, when I'm up at 4 and then I'm drinking water and then I'm listening to, positive piece of content, and then I'm, going to get my boot camp workout or circuit training in, and then I get my polar plunge in, which is good for the mind, body, and soul, increases my immune system, decreases inflammation, a lot of other benefits. But I'm at HQ, like ready to rock at 6 a.m. And when I have stacked those wins, then it just really opens me up, because then also I have about a 2-hour magic window before HQ starts getting busy, right? Because if I, was delayed on my sleep and was delayed in my workouts, then I'm coming in later and then I'm catching up and then I'm hitting all the fires. So to your point, I'm a very structured, regimented person. My first meeting, always, I don't take any meetings before 10 a.m. unless it's an emergency. So I really have a magic hour from 6 to 10 to get all my things that I need to do to proactively move the organization forward. And a really good message on fitness, on business, and life is you need to be proactive. If you're reactive, you're going to have a hard time with life in general and fitness in general. But really, I have a solid 4 hours, 2 hours before the HQ gets busy, but really 4 hours before my first meeting. And that really sets myself up. Then once that happens, then I can basically get pulled in and handle fires and all that. But to your point, Mary Katherine, it's that foundational practice, is that routine. I'm a very regimented guy. I'm grounded in fitness. And again, early to bed, early to rise has really set the tone for my career.
I love that. 4 a.m. though. Whew. So what time do you go to bed?
By 8:30 for sure, and sometimes 8. So that's also the give and take, which is kind of a little weird, but it's important. Otherwise, I won't be able to have that magic time at 4.
Okay. Question. I've been wondering this. Does Tatiana do this too?
Complete opposite. It's interesting. So my wife, Tatiana, it's interesting. I heard this on a relationship podcast recently, and I so buy into this. Yeah. You have to have the same values with your partner, because if your values are off, that's the foundation. Right. But you can actually have quite different personalities, and we are so different, actually. She's a night owl. She's way more introverted. We have very, very different personalities. So no, to answer your question, and there's many times actually, and she'll kill me for saying this, but I'm waking up as she goes to bed.
No.
Not all the time, but enough where I can point that out. So that's actually a work in progress. That's one thing we're working on from a relationship perspective, just to kind of get a little bit more dialed in, because sometimes, our schedules are a little bit different. Be
difficult. Yeah.
It can be, but she does an incredible job of taking good care, and she'll prioritize me, especially when I come home after a long day, knowing that, I get home probably about 5:30, 5:45, and I basically have 2 hours where I'm kind of engaged, having dinner and connecting with her. Because then after that, that period of time, then I'm off to sleep. So she will definitely pay, spend some family time together. And then once I go to sleep, then she does her work.
That means she gets to choose what she wants to watch at night, right? She doesn't have to worry about what you want to watch.
Yes. And at the time of year when Christmas comes and all that, in the 6 months my mom lives with us. She can
spend time with her.
Hallmark movies.
I'm sure they have fun together.
Hallmark movies literally are the only things that on the TV. But thankfully, I'm sure you like Hallmark movies. If you do, no knock. But for me, not my cup of tea, so they can watch it in their own privacy. And for me, I'm in dreamland.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. You said, your routine, get up at 4 o'clock. So for me, as I mentioned, it's hard for me to have that. However, I have found that in my busy work schedule as being an entrepreneur, your work never stops. Like it's just always going. And so something that I have found that works so well for me when I can do it is going to bed early enough that I can get up an hour before I know my kids are going to get up. So a lot of times my daughter, she gets up between 6 and 6:30. If I can get up at 5, the amount of things I can get done in like complete silence without somebody text messaging me or calling me because nobody's up at 5 a.m. Like if I can just get that hour in before they get up, I can get like 3 or 4 hours worth of work done in that 1 hour. Like I cannot believe how efficient I am with my time now that I'm a mom. Like looking back 6 years ago, what was I like? Why was I saying I was stressed out? Like, oh my gosh, like I was just lazy back then, I guess. But today I feel like if I could just get an hour, 2 hours, and I do the same when they go to bed at night. Like sometimes Trevor and I, we take turns putting the kids to bed and we take turns with everything. Bath time, cleaning up, like one person gives the kids a bath, one person's cleaning up the kitchen. Like we just work best like that. And so it's, daddy's turn tonight. If it's daddy's turn to put the kids to bed, then I can dip into my office and I can spend an hour and a half doing work before I give myself like some downtime to chill before bed. And just getting like that hour, 2 hours here and there, it makes like a lifetime of a difference to have your undivided attention on something. And I know a lot of moms can relate to this, like working moms, like when you have kids, you can never plan for anything because you just don't know what's going to happen.
I have so much empathy and respect. And Mary Katherine, this is why you are the perfect host for the show. It's interesting. I kind of laid down my vision and like my magic time and need from a business context, but the fact that you can color that in from a parenting perspective, which so many of our audience members can relate to, is just, you're speaking to our people's soul and going to help them so much, which I'm so excited about.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I feel like we could talk all day about, entrepreneurship and your role at Fit Body Bootcamp and your tips for living a successful life when it comes to your health and fitness. But I like to leave our listeners with this question. I ask all of my guests, what does beyond the scale mean to you?
Oh, I love that. For me, it just shines a light on the fact that fitness is important. Fitness is so critically important to the foundation of someone's life, but it's not their whole life. It's literally just the catalyst to make that person's life better. So it's really, really important that you focus on your fitness, your nutrition, your mindset, and really developing your fitness game, but not for this fitness game in itself. So you can be a better person, a better spouse, a better mother for the world. So you can help your family, help your community. So for me, Mary Katherine, that's what that means.
I love it. Thank you so much. Well, I got incredible value from this episode, and I know that you did too. So please make sure to subscribe to our channel. Give us a like, comment below with your biggest takeaways, and share with all your friends.